Pollenfall. Chapter 1. Beneath the Golden Death. The mine air was thick, a shimmering haze of gold dust that clung to skin, hair, and lungs. Campanita adjusted the battered mask over her face, the cracked filters barely keeping the pollen at bay. Around her, the tunnels groaned under the weight of the earth above, and the constant hum of machinery droned like an angry hive. Another shift, another day closer to death. She chipped away at the mineral-crusted walls, each strike of her pickaxe sending glittering clouds into the air. Once, a lifetime ago, she had wondered if the gold was beautiful. Now, she knew better. The pollen was poison, and beauty was just another lie they fed the slaves to keep them obedient. "Campy," a voice hissed from down the shaft. She turned, catching sight of Dren, a boy barely older than herself, beckoning her toward a shadowy alcove. She hesitated. Skipping a quota could mean lashes or worse, exile to the surface. But Dren's wide eyes gleamed with something rare, fear. Curiosity won over caution. Campanita followed him into the narrow passage, the rock closing tight around them. Dren pressed a trembling finger to a hidden panel in the wall, a relic from the old world, before the Pollenfall. With a hiss, the metal door slid aside, revealing a small chamber. Inside, dust-coated screens flickered weakly. On a cracked console, a single light blinked. "Accessing. Archive. What is this?" she whispered. Dren only shook his head. "Found it by accident. It's old. From before. Before." The word was sacred and dangerous. Campanita stepped closer. The screen came alive, stuttering images of forests thick with towering trees, humans in white coats cheering as saplings burst into growth. Text scrolled across the screen faster than she could read, but fragments burned into her mind. Project Verdance, accelerate oxygenation, weaponized growth, ecological dominance. Her heart pounded. This wasn't an accident. The world outside, the choking pollen seas, the golden death, it had been made. On purpose. A sharp crack echoed behind them. Boots. Overseer patrol. Dren's face went pale. Without thinking, Campanita slammed the door shut and wiped her hands on her ragged trousers. The console's glow vanished, leaving them swallowed by darkness. But it was too late. The truth had rooted itself inside her. And once planted, a seed never dies easily. Pollenfall. Chapter 2. Cracks in the stone. They didn't catch them. Not that day. Campanita and Dren slipped back into the work lines, faces down, tools swinging, sweat blending with pollen until they looked like every other ghost in the mines. The overseers, towering figures in black resin armor, barked orders, their boots stomping patterns of dominance into the dust. But they moved on. Still, the fear lingered, coiling around Campanita's ribs. She barely heard the sirens blare the end of shift. Barely noticed the long shuffle of broken bodies funneling back into the barracks, a hollowed-out cavern where 1,000 bunks stacked like bones. Campanita lay stiff in her cot that night, staring at the ceiling where spores glowed faintly like false stars. Sleep came, shallow and brittle. Dreams of a sky she had never seen twisted into nightmares of gold storms and falling trees. Morning brought pain, always did, but it also brought something else, a plan. Later, crouched over a watery bowl of stew, Dren leaned in close. His voice was barely a breath. "We can go back, find out more." Campanita shoved a spoonful into her mouth, chewing slowly, thinking. Around them, whispers floated. Not words, just the low murmur of despair that filled every meal. "What good is knowing?" she muttered. "We're trapped." "You saw it too," Dren insisted. His eyes, brown, flecked with gold pollen like everyone's, burned bright. "It's not just survival down here. It's lies. All of it. The surface, it wasn't supposed to be death." She hated how much she wanted to believe him. But survival wasn't built on hope. Not here. Her hands tightened around the bowl. Cracks spider-webbed in the clay. "If we get caught," she began. "We won't." Dren leaned closer. "I found something else. A tunnel. Old. Sealed off. Maybe a way out." A way out. The words flared in her mind like forbidden fire. She had lived her whole life underground, fed stories of a world scoured clean by pollen storms, where the surface cooked flesh and the air turned blood to rot. But what if those stories were just another wall? Before she could answer, the siren howled, shift change. Another day in the mines. Another chance for the truth to either set her free, or kill her. Campanita stood, shoving the bowl away. "Show me," she said. Pollenfall. Chapter 3. Ghosts in the walls. The plan wasn't complicated. Nothing could be complicated down here, not if you wanted to live. During third shift, when the overseers swapped patrol routes and the air was thick with fatigue, Campanita and Dren slipped away. Tools clutched to their chests like weapons, they moved fast, silent, shadows among shadows. The hidden passage lay behind a collapsed ventilation shaft. To reach it, they had to crawl on their bellies through a tunnel barely wider than a coffin. Campanita bit down her fear, the fear of tight spaces, of sudden collapses, of being buried alive. Fear had no place tonight. The tunnel opened into a forgotten service corridor. Pipes lined the walls like ribs. The floor was coated in sticky golden pollen that clung to their boots with every step. "This way," Dren whispered, pointing at a rusted hatch. Campanita heaved it open, muscles burning. The smell hit her first, dry rot and old electricity. They slid inside, pulling the hatch closed behind them. And froze. Lights, weak, flickering strips lined the ceiling, buzzing like dying insects. And along the walls, markings. Scratched into the metal in jagged lines. Names, dates, messages, surface alive. They lied. Follow the white chain. Campanita ran her fingers over the engravings, her pulse hammering in her ears. Someone had been here before. Others had tried, maybe even made it. She turned, and her boot knocked something over, a low crash of metal on metal. They both jumped. Dren scrambled to pick up what she'd knocked down, a box. No, a case. Heavy, sealed with a faded government sigil. Heart hammering, Campanita knelt and pried it open. Inside, a battered oxygen mask, sleeker than the crude ones they wore. A small handheld device, screen dark but intact. A map, old, stained with pollen, but still readable. Dren let out a shaky laugh. Old world tech, he breathed. Real. Campanita barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the map, a labyrinth of tunnels, service routes, and a red line scratched by hand leading upward, always upward, toward a place marked with one word. Exit. Her fingers trembled. For the first time in her life, the word freedom felt almost real, almost. Because suddenly, faint but unmistakable, a noise echoed from the corridor behind them, heavy boots, metallic breathing. Overseers. They were not alone. Pollenfall. Chapter 4. Stings and Secrets. The overseers' boots grew louder. No time to think. No time to breathe. Campanita snatched the map and device, shoving them into her shirt. Dren grabbed the oxygen mask. Together, they plunged deeper into the tunnels, feet pounding over metal and stone. The light strips faded behind them, swallowed by darkness. Their battered mask filters hissed with every breath. Ahead, the passage forked, left or right? Left, Campanita gasped, trusting instinct. They veered left, and stumbled straight into hell. The chamber opened wide and low, choked with hanging roots and broken machinery. And there, half concealed in a cocoon of golden resin, something moved. A buzz, low, hungry, filled the air. Out of the shadows, it unfurled. A hornet, mutated by centuries of pollen saturation. It stood the height of a man, chitinous plates slick with slime. Wings torn but still twitching. Mandibles clicking, dripping venom onto the floor where it sizzled. Dren froze. Campanita didn't move. She shouted, yanking him aside just as the hornet lunged. It struck where they had stood a heartbeat before, mandibles snapping, cracking. Stone. No weapons, just their mining tools. Campanita swung her pickaxe in a wide arc, slamming it into the hornet's shoulder. The creature screeched, the sound stabbing into her skull. It thrashed, knocking her sprawling. Dren darted forward, stabbing wildly with his chisel. The hornet's wing shredded under the blow, but the creature retaliated, its barbed stinger flashing. Campanita rolled, grabbed a broken pipe, and jammed it into the hornet's mouth just as it struck at Dren. The creature convulsed, impaling itself deeper onto the jagged metal. It shuddered once, then collapsed. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing. Blood, golden and foul-smelling, pooled around the corpse. Campanita wiped her mouth, tasting iron. "We need to go," Dren whispered. Campanita nodded, forcing herself to her feet. They skirted the carcass and pressed deeper into the forgotten tunnels. Soon, they found it, half buried in rubble. A rusted transport vessel, marked with the Space Kingdom's sigil, a silver-ringed planet. The side hatch hung open, gaping like a wound. Inside, skeletal benches lined the walls, shackles bolted to them. Old stains darkened the floor. Campanita's stomach turned. This was for us, Dren said hollowly. Slaves. They sold their own. Words etched into the metal near the hatch confirmed it. Priority transfer. Genetic labor stock. Exchange. Alloy, medtech, rations. Classified. Noble tier only. Only the underground kingdom's upper class knew. Only they profited. The rest, the miners, the workers, the children born into darkness, were just product. Campanita stared at the empty shackles, rage and horror burning away her fear. The world wasn't just poisoned. It was rotting from the inside. She turned to Dren, her voice low and cold. We find the exit, she said. We find the others, and then we burn this whole damn system down. Pollenfall. Chapter 5. Countdown. The transport's cockpit was gutted, wires stripped, controls smashed, but something shimmered faintly under the dust. Campy pried it loose. A tablet, old world tech, miraculously intact. The screen flickered to life when she brushed her fingers over it. Password protection had long since degraded. It unlocked instantly, showing a tangle of ancient schematics, loading bars, and grainy videos. Then, maps, routes. Campy and Dren leaned over it, their faces glowing blue in the dark. Lines spider-webbed from the underground kingdom outward, snaking toward the Sea Kingdom, the Mountain Kingdom, even dotted outposts near Space Kingdom drop points. Each route is marked with symbols, locked gates, patrol zones, and supply caches. And most critical of all, a cluster of highlighted tunnels marked access points to surface, monitor priority alpha. But the excitement died fast. Next to each access point was an ominous sigil, the emblem of the Mountain Kingdom. And layered around them, drawn in stark biohazard yellow, were dozens of warning markers. Hive zones. Bees, Dren muttered. Hornets. Maybe worse. Campy swallowed hard. She remembered the hornet they'd just fought, and that was a scout. If full hives had formed around the exits. It's a fortress, she said grimly. Not just soldiers. Nests too. As if the world itself wanted to keep them buried. Dren tapped the corner of the screen. Another message blinked. Power remaining. 6 days. No recharge source available. Campy stared at it. 6 days. 6 days to plan, to move, to reach the surface before the map went dark forever. Otherwise, they'd be blind, wandering the endless poisoned tunnels until the pollen swallowed them whole. Dren rubbed his hands over his face, leaving streaks of grime. What do we do? He whispered. Campy locked her jaw. The rage from the slave transport still boiled inside her, hot and righteous. We move, she said. We find supplies, weapons, allies if we can, then we cut through whatever stands in our way. Her fingers tightened around the tablet until her knuckles whitened. 6 days, Dren, she said. That's all the time we get. 6 days to steal their freedom. Or die trying.